What are some spiritual tools that have helped you to get unstuck? We, of course, talked about the artist way. I would love to know other things that really help you in that
Oh,
process.
I could get a PhD on this subject. This is like my favorite thing to talk about. I call it my spiritual toolkit. And I even like think of like Dora the Explorer with her little backpack. And I'm like, okay, what are my little tools in my backpack that help me like journey this life, this human experience? So the first one that I was ever introduced to is actually astrology. I started reading astrology when I was 12 years old. I was obsessed with it. I'm a Capricorn. It made no sense to me. I'm not a super saver. I'm not like quiet and reserved. And then I got this book called, oh gosh, it's like sexology or something. It breaks the signs down into masculine and feminine. And it was like, oh, the feminine Capricorn's much different. She's much more playful. She's maybe spends her money more. I might not be as patient as like the Capricorn is often described. And I was like, okay, this actually is resonating. So I would read it and I would read it for my friends. And had a lot of fun with that. While I was having fun with astrology and then later tarot, it wasn't until that again, 26 years old, when things kind of blew up in my life, where I started actually taking these tools seriously instead of just a thing that's like, oh, this is a fun little party trick. I'd be at bars and I'd be palm reading for people or I'd be telling them about an astrology sign. And I was like, that's fun. But how can I actually utilize these things? My spiritual toolkit right now is comprised of tarot, astrology, human design, and gene keys. And tarot is my reflection. It's 78 cards of universal human experiences. So if I'm really caught up in my emotions or I'm really feeling things and I don't seem to have the words for it, I'll shuffle, pull a tarot card, and I'll say, what does this reflect back to me? I'm pulling Five of Swords. Five of Swords is this card where we are caught up in a loop of previous stories we've had in our lives. We're like, okay, this hasn't worked out in the past. I've done this before. I've taken this risk before and it hasn't worked out in the past. So I'm not going to take this risk again. And so then we get stuck in the Five of Sword energy. We don't move forward because we think our past is going to dictate our future. And that lesson there will help me be like, okay, well, where am I not taking risks because I'm afraid I'm going to fail like I have in the past? And can I see that the future is unwritten? Thank you, Natasha Bedingfield. And how can I move forward from that? So that's tarot. Then astrology, I kind of use it as the weather. I look at it and I'm like, okay, what are the energies I just should be aware of? Astrology, like right now, we can like move through and see like, is there Mercury retrograde happening? What's the moon in? What sign are we in? And, is there any really strong aspects happening? And in doing that, I can just be like, oh, maybe that's why I'm feeling this way. Oh, maybe that's why this is happening. I'm not going to say my life will look a certain way because this is happening. I say, oh, here's some energy that is available to me. Like a Mercury retrograde is a great example where it's a reviewing time. It's a time for us to go back and process and look at what has happened. And we get to say, like, is this how I want to continue on this path? Have I crossed all my T's? Have I dotted all my I's? Do I just need to look this contract over one more time? How can I just be a little slower in my approach? I really love astrology for just being like, what's the weather? What's the energetic weather of the moment for me? Human design, the beefy boy. He is such a beefy boy. I am always so intimidated to get people on human design because I know how intense it is. But I'm like, hey, just look up your authority, look up your type, look up your strategy, live in that for an entire year. I know you want to go learn all about yourself. You've had the same experience.
Oh my gosh. I think that's it. I feel like
Please.
I have to share this analogy
Yes.
because this is it. Because people are like, I want to know all the nitty gritty. Feel free to steal this, but make sure my name's attached to it. No, I figured out an analogy to help break it down for people because everybody's like, I want to know all the things. And I'm like, no, no, no. It's taken me years of learning human design. And then that last fall for me to come back to say, oh my gosh, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm not using the basics. If I'm not using the basics, the rest of it is not going to make sense. It's not going to feel resonant. So, our human design is a lamp, okay? For a lamp to work, it must be plugged in. Our inner authority is that plug,
Mhm,
okay? We're not done yet. That strategy, it's the switch.
mhm,
If you're not using your strategy right, the light will not work. If those two basic things are not in there, if you're not practiced using those, nothing else will work. That lamp will not work. And I still think the not self theme and the signatures are really important.
mhm.
But I'm like, you have to get used to being able to plug that light in and turn that switch on before anything is lit up. And it is that energetic, like you were saying with astrology, it's all about energy, right?
Mhm.
And when we can light our human design up, I feel like that's like the true idea of manifestation.
Mm.
Because the things you desire, that life you envision will come to you.
It really
You don't have
does.
to work hard.
You
We
don't.
don't have to work hard,
You
right?
don't.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
but like so much. I'm like, stop looking into it. Like practice the basics. Practice it.
100%. The basics are so, so incredibly important, and anytime that I find myself feeling frustrated, which is my not self theme, I need to go back and be like, "Well, how am I responding to things?" Am I responding to things? Am I trying to initiate things? Because I'm a generator. I'm a 4-6 generator with emotional authority. What changed my life with human design, the most profound thing that like shifted and made me believe in human design is finding out that I was emotional authority because I have got to take time before I make a decision. If you catch me on a good day, I'm going to say yes immediately. Then tomorrow I'm going to be like, why the hell did I say yes to that? And then eventually I'll even out and be like, well, I'm kind of at like an X percent of like yes or no. So I need to go through that roller coaster of emotion before I just commit to something. And when I started using that, when I was like, okay, I'm going to try with this because I believe this about myself. And I started implementing it into my life. Like a mentor's like, hey, I'm opening up this program. I only have one spot left. I need to know if you want to be it. And I was like, I love you to death. Can you please give me 3 days? And she respected that. And I came out of it and I was an 80% yes, which in emotional authority, you're only ever going to be the most at 80%. If you ever think you're 100% on something, you got a little bit more emotion to like feel through. And I was like, okay, I'm into this. I'm going to sign up. And it was a program that changed my life. But I needed to go through that. Otherwise, I think I would have found myself resenting it or being like, how can I back out the next day? Or how can I do, X, Y, and Z to like, I never would have felt the confidence. And so, human design, when we work with energy, I truly think this is a little bit of a tangent. Like 300 years ago, we got obsessed with the mind. And then in the past century, we got obsessed with emotions and like psychology. And I think we're about to shift into a phase where we're going to get obsessed with energy because we're starting to see that that is so profoundly important to us creating the lives that we want is that intentional, authentic expression of our energy and how we align with that is when things actually finally can align for us in our lives. Human design, I think, is that vehicle or gives the language for people to understand how to do that. So, coming back to like my spiritual toolkit, we have tarot that gives me these little moments of reflection, astrology that's giving me this energetic landscape. Design is really like the car that I'm driving. It's the motor of my life. It's like the instruction manual of like, hey, are you turning on the car? Are you actually listening to like how you're supposed to be moving in this world? And then the final one, Gene Keys, I won't spend too much time because I'm just kind of getting into it. Honestly, I'm just using it as a contemplation practice. It's beautifully written descriptions of these keys that are about your life purpose and pretty intense. The descriptions are so gorgeous. I just feel like when I read them, I come back to myself. It's just a contemplative practice for me where I just read about, either a key in my chart or if I'm working through something like greed is one that I've been reading about recently. And it's just helping me give a different perspective to these very human words that we have so much attached to. And it's almost dissolving and breaking apart those perceptions I have on those words to see it in a new light.
Yeah, I love how you broke that down. I actually have the book, but I have not dove into it too much. I'm not sure you can answer this for me, but like the numbers in human design are correlated with the gene keys. So when you talk about that you're diving into one specifically for you, where in your human design chart are you looking for that?
So there's 3 different pathways in the gene keys, and they are all aligned to your human design. So gene keys is basically building on human design to tell you a little bit more about your energetic makeup in the sense of human design's like, how do things work? And then like gene keys is like, how do you want to express that? So my son is 58 gene key. That's my like top one. And in gene keys, that's my brand. That's how people see me. That is like my outward facing persona is 58. And that is the gene key of, I think it's like joy and expression. Of course, I don't remember now in this moment, but everything in my life is really about being joyful. It is about being bliss. It's the city of bliss. I'm supposed to be of bliss, but then the shadow side of that is the shadow is dissatisfaction, the gift is vitality, and the city is bliss. So with gene keys, it kind of gives you like again the expression of that energy you're working with. So if I'm out of alignment, if I'm not in the right expression, I'm going to be dissatisfied. If I want to get out of that, I need to then lean into the gift, which is vitality. And if I'm in like the ultimate, dreaminess of this, if I really expanded with this energy, really worked with what the book is talking about with these gifts and these shadows, I can enter in the city, which is the bliss. Prior to working with Gene Keys, I've had intuitive readers and, psychics. I'm like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And they're like, your purpose is joy. Your purpose is just to be joy. And then when I opened up Gene Keys and I saw that this was like my main Gene Key, I was like, okay, a little too on the nose, you guys.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. That makes so much sense, and, like, I have your chart, and I'm looking at it now, but, like, I've looked up these things of my own, but, like, the way that you've spoken about it really makes sense, so thank you for bringing that up, And I love everything in your toolkit. I tell people, like, you have to build your toolkits. I use all of those things. Like, I have my spiritual toolkit, like, I have my spiritual practices. I am my most embodied self when I can tap into my spiritual toolkit. But I also have created toolkits around my cycle. And I don't know if you've ever done that or if you've thought about that, but like, that's where I have learned about my energetic
Mhm.
dips and ebbs and flows, and knowing that, like, there's certain things that are gonna support me in certain times. So, whatever your toolkit looks like, you gotta build it. You gotta have these things that you can know you can come back to if you're overwhelmed, if you need that reflection. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a big part of staying aligned with ourselves, right?
Definitely. And I just want to add that like these are almost studies and then you can express it in different ways. You can study the, using the tarot, you can then journal from that. You can meditate. You can use like those other typical like spiritual tools that we often talk about.
Welcome to Float Activity, the channel that guides you on a transformative journey towards spiritual wisdom, self-development, and healing practices, all aimed at elevating your intuition and aligning you with your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Kara Dempsey, and I'm thrilled to have you joining me as we learn together. Please subscribe and share this with a friend to help grow my channel. I appreciate you, and we'll chat soon.